Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, makes banking faster and easier. Like this.
Fargo, what's my checking account routing number?
And this.
Fargo, turn off my debit card.
And this.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries last month?
And that's just the beginning. Do you, Fargo? You can. In the Wells Fargo mobile app. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
Terms and conditions apply. Your mobile carrier's availability and message and data rates may apply. Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
Ooh, a spicy question. I
because
love
the
it.
writing is sort of everything, right? Like you can fix plot holes, but if the writing is
so some readers love that, and some readers are like, "But I wanted more of this." So it's kind of a gamble.
Hello, and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by a crime and thriller writer whose debut novel is coming out on the 26th of October. It's Anna Britton. Hello, welcome.
Hello, it's lovely to be here. It's really cool hearing your voice as like a person talking to me rather than the person I listen to on a podcast.
Oh, well, I'm glad I live up to the hype.
You too, very much.
Thanks so much for being here. Let's start off as we often do with the book. Tell us a little bit about your debut novel, Shot in the Dark.
Yes, that is its name. I'm probably the same as every debut author, where I'm still just a bit terrible at talking about it. So, it, like you said, it's a crime thriller, and it kind of starts with this young woman, running through a moonlit forest, and she's kind of scared, and she's sort of running away from something, and she's kind of hurt her leg, so she can't keep running, so she has to climb a tree. And she kind of thinks she's safe up there. She's about to sort of phone someone for help when gunshots ring out through the forest. And then the next morning, detectives Gabe Martin and Juliet Stern are sort of tasked with finding out who killed this young woman. And we then, from there, we follow Gabe, and it goes on from there.
Oh, okay. A classic setup. Is it procedural crime?
Yes, yeah, that's what people tell me. So yeah, it follows, let's say Gabe is, she's a detective sergeant, and it kind of follows her point of view as they work through like different suspects and kind of, yeah.
Okay. So obviously all stories start somewhere with a specific seed, whether that's setting or character or something like that. For this story, what was the first part of the novel to pop into your head? What was the kind of inception point?
It was that first scene.
Okay.
And I kind of, how I write is that I kind of see it as a movie in my head.
Uh-huh.
And that it was so clear. And I was so happy when they decided to use that for the cover for it. So that first scene is the cover of the book. And they've just captured it so perfectly, that sort of like beautiful blue kind of moonlight coming through the trees, and this like young woman kind of, like in my head, she's kind of looking behind herself at that point and being like, can I hear something behind me? And then it kind of all kicks off and she's kind of running. So yeah, I kind of had, and what was quite funny is that I had this young woman in my head, and she was quite clear, and she's running away from something. I don't want to give too much away. And it kind of, and then she dies very, very quickly. Sorry for the spoiler. And then from there, that was quite different for me, because I think normally when books come into my head, that first scene starts with the main character, so I kind of get into their head straight away, whereas this time I was kind of in Melanie's head, who unfortunately is the young one who died, and then had to switch to a very different person's mind, and kind of actually this was someone else's story. Actually, this is Gabe's story, and that's who's going to tell this story. So it was kind of, yeah, a bit different. And also, like, I'm a complete pantser, so I had no idea who'd killed her or anything. So I had to go and sort of figure that out because we went along.
Oh, that's so interesting. So you kind of thought up the scene in your head, and you were kind of very happy with the scene, and then from there it was a sort of working both backwards and forwards, because you're working backwards for the lead up and then forwards for like the actual detectives, figuring out everything. Yeah.
And it was I really liked this. It wasn't the first crime novel I've written, but I really love that crime kind of imposes a structure on you, that like a thing happens and you have to go and figure out who did it or why they did it or whatever. So I really like unpicking that, and kind of, I loved the cast of suspects we've got in this book, because they're all kind of they've all got their own stuff going on that they're kind of like cross about or lying about or whatever else is going on, and it's all really confusing figuring out, like, are you just being an asshole because you're an asshole, or are you being an asshole because you killed this young woman?
Yeah.
And it's like, I think I heard Leanne Moriarty talk about how she never knows the ending to her books and kind of just figures it out as she's going along, and that really reassured me, because I was like, she's a brilliant writer, and if she can do it, then I can too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's no like, don't let anyone ever tell you that there's like one way to like write a book. It's like you have to. It's like there's no way. There's only your way and the way that works for you. Yeah,
and I know, like, because Melissa Williver, she's like a friend of ours, and she's so lovely, and she's such a plotter. Like, she is. I know that I think she has spreadsheets. I don't want to put that into her mouth, but like I imagine there's spreadsheets involved and all this kind of thing. But I bring out the spreadsheets when I edit, but when I'm writing, it's a lot of post-it notes that are kind of moving around. And like, I'm writing book 2 in the series now, and I think like maybe a week or so ago, I was like, oh, maybe it's this person that did it, and like it really like helped me think about. And so it's all kind of changing and moving all the time when I'm drafting. I think I'd feel really sort of caged in if I tried to plan it too much.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. Well, I've been experimenting with a bit of planning recently, and one thing I found about planning is that you can also have those moments, sort of, if you map out your plan maybe for the first time or something, the second time you kind of go to review it, you suddenly think of something new and you think, oh, that works perfectly because it fits in here and here and here. But I'm kind of the opinion that there's not actually too much difference between planning and pantsing. It's just the order and the framework with which you're working out the story. So like when people describe themselves as a pantser, I think that's kind of like your plan is just the first draft, right?
I guess so. And I think I like knowing things can be really fluid.
Yeah.
So I think I would, and I think a lot of it is like that first time I write it is really me telling myself the story. And I love writing first drafts. They're like my favorite bit. And I think I'd actually like maybe find it a bit boring if I was like, I know exactly what's going to happen next. And I know, so I sort of know vaguely the ending. Like the ending has got to be, you find whoever did it, right?
Yeah. You need to know where you're landing.
But I think I love that sort of freedom to play. But like you said, I guess that's what a planner is doing when they're writing out this epic plan, is that they're playing at that point, and they kind of like having that really like nailed down before they then go and sort of actually write the sentences. Whereas I like quite like writing the sentences and being like, oh, what's going to happen next? Who knows?
Yeah. I think the practically the other big difference if you do it, depending on what order you do it in, is I imagine, do you have more sort of editorial drafts?
Oh yes, yeah. My first drafts are like terrible,
chaos. Yeah,
they are absolutely appalling. And I'll get halfway through and be like, oh, I don't like that person. I'm going to completely change them, or I suddenly realise, oh, I should have been doing this for the last few chapters, and I'll just suddenly start doing it and write a note for myself, like go back and figure that out. I think I'm very much as well, when I write, I don't edit as I write, I just keep going.
Okay. People said that that's a really good way of doing it, because you just need to you can't edit a blank page is the thing people say. So it's like, you just need to get it down. If you're constantly editing yourself, it really slows the process. Yeah,
I think I would just get really stuck on making it perfect. And actually there's some things that I'm like, oh, I should have been doing this for the last few chapters. And then I get a few more chapters on and I'm like, oh no, doing that's really stupid. So if I'd gone back and added it in, I would then have to go back and take it all out again. So I sort of figure it out as I go, but they are very, very messy first drafts. But the thing is, I say that I'm rewriting the first draft of book 2 now, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's awful, it's terrible, and I was like tweeting about, I hate this, it's terrible compared to book 1, and then I went back and reread it and was like, oh, it's not so bad. Like, what am I on about? And I think, I convinced myself they're absolute sort of dumpster fires, and they're okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's, most writers deal with some degree of imposter syndrome, I think, during the process. It's all part of the fun. That's why we do it, right?
Yeah, maybe.
So I noticed you mentioned that you have written other you said you'd written other crime before. You've written other stories before. Am I right in thinking that you've been, even though this is your debut novel, you have actually been writing for a long time?
Yeah, really long time. It has to be about 10 years now that I've been writing. Yeah, so I've been at it for a while. That I am very glad that this is my debut. I think I do feel for people that their first book they ever write is their first book they have out, because maybe they're just much cleverer than me, but I know that I've learned a lot in the 10 years, and kind of, yes, I'm very glad for the way it turned out. I wouldn't have minded a slightly reduced timetable, but yeah, about 10 years I've been going at it.
Had you always written crime and thriller in this kind of genre?
No, so I started out with young adult, and probably wrote, I don't know, 6 or 7 young adult novels.
Wow, the full manuscripts.
Yeah. So I'm quite speedy, particularly with a first draft. So they probably only take me sort of 2 to 3 months to get out. And I don't know about you, but once I started writing, it was like this sort of bug that you kind of, if I'm not writing, I'm a bit antsy. So I'm kind of, I'm always sort of typing away and coming up with something. So I wrote quite a few young adults, and then I moved into sci-fi. So I think I wrote like 4 or 5 sci-fi, and then moved into crime, and I've probably written maybe like 4 or 5 crime as well.
Wow, you're prolific.
I really like writing. I just really like it, and I think it's a really great way for me to really focus on something in terms of like mental health. It kind of really helps me sort of enter that sort of focus zone and get all those thoughts stop my brain whirring. And I love telling stories. Like it's like so much fun. Just really love it.
So you've been doing this for about 10 years. You've written, more than sounds like at least a dozen full manuscripts here.
Yeah.
Did you submit your other stuff? Did you kind of look for agents? Did you look for publishers?
Yeah, I did. So my first book was about a boy who wakes up from a coma, and he has lived this whole life in the coma that he then has to come to terms with not being real. But he kind of dreamt about people he knew. So he's like really confused because like what memories are real? Like I love that story. It made absolutely no sense. And I really, I went to a literary festival on the Isle of Wight where I live. And it was Caroline Sheldon was there. And she's an agent, and she gave a talk. And she basically said, if you're looking to get an agent, you should submit for a year. And you should submit to 10 agents per month. And that's kind of like a good thing to aim for. So I'm quite literal. So I was like, okay, that's what I'll do. So I submitted that book for a year, and I got 113 rejections.
Nice.
Which was very good.
Yeah.
I got a couple of like full requests, and I actually won I came third in a competition.
Okay.
Retreat West, I think, or something. They did like a first chapter thing or whatever, and it was all lovely, and I got some lovely feedback as well, but definitely was not a novel that was going to go anywhere. And I wrote a couple more, like both young adult, and I had a 1-to-1 with an agent. I think it's my third novel, or was it my third novel I'd been submitting, but probably not the third one I'd written. But I had a 1-to-1 with an agent, and they really loved it and actually signed with that agent for that novel. And I was probably with them for about a year, maybe a little bit more. And we were kind of working on that novel, and they were really pushing. My young adult novels were very quiet. And that is a word that people didn't want to hear about young adult novels at that point.
What do you mean by quiet?
So they're not Hunger Games, run into an arena, kill off your friends, like kind of thing. They were about like finding yourself, and kind of this one that was signed with was set at the end of the world, but it didn't focus on that at all.
Yeah.
It was literally about this guy, and he meets like another guy, and they kind of like they need to find somewhere safe to live, and also kind of realize that they might be like good like a lovely found family for each other, and it wasn't about the big explosion-y things. And I think that's kind of where I came a cropper with that agent as well, because I ended up splitting from them, was because they were really pushing for like, have more of the drama, have more of the fear and the like sort of
action.
Crazy. Whereas I was like, no, I just want to talk about them like finding some sweets that haven't gone off and having a nice time in a field with a cow and and
a bit cozier.
I just really want it to be cute and
yeah. Well, that's very big now. So
yes, yeah, and I guess maybe they're stories that I loved and I maybe would go back to one day. I think because I write a lot of stories, I don't really feel too much like, I do feel sad when I have to shelve something, but I also don't. I'm like, there'll be another story. Like I'll write more. So I kind of don't feel too much.
That's so healthy for a writer.
Yeah. I think it's hard, isn't it? I don't know. I'm looking back on it with like years of distance from it. At the time, I was probably very angsty about it. But now I'm sort of like, well, actually, writing those stories brought me here. And I'm really happy here. So I'm sort of glad to have written them and glad what's happened with them happened. So
yeah, I mean, every single one has to be like a huge learning curve for you. And also because you've done different genres.
Yeah.
There's so much you can learn and you can bring into your kind of like, so because you hadn't just written procedural crime stuff, I'm going to, your novel, your debut coming out now will not read exactly like every single procedural crime kind of staple out there because you have all of these influences from other genres.
I think so. Like one thing I really like about it is that there's like a bit of romance in it. And that's kind of something that I don't feel is missing from crime all the time, but I quite like a bit of romance. So I like to put it in. And I guess maybe one thing that's maybe a little bit different as well is that Gabe is a little bit younger. So she's sort of early 30s. Whereas a lot of sort of police procedural was just sort of 40s, 50s. So I guess she's just a little bit different in sort of who she is and how she sees the world maybe.
Hello, Saver. Whether you're saving for that trip to the tropics or saving for an emergency, now is the time to take advantage of Wells Fargo's savings options. Wells Fargo offers savings accounts that can help you save towards your goals. So, what are you saving for? Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/save to open a savings account today.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
So at what point in after you'd written many YAs, dabbled in sci-fi, did you decide to go and just write crime, thriller, and then at some point there, you obviously connected with Saskia Leach, your agent?
So I sort of, off the back of the first agent and sort of splitting with them, I think it did make me sort of rethink, is young adult for me? And I'd kind of been writing a bit of sci-fi at that point and a bit of crime. And I was like, I'm just going to like lean that way a bit more and sort of see where that leads me. So I wrote probably just went and wrote a couple more novels, as you do, and kind of just saw how it led me. And I wrote the first version of Shot in the Dark and just felt really excited about it. I don't know that it's inherently better than any of the other ones I've written, and I'd love to see the other crime novels I've written sort of go somewhere. But I just felt really, I was like, I can see this one, I can kind of feel it. And so that's the one I sort of went out to agents with, and it got like a really sort of pleasing amount of interest, which was lovely. And Saskia, like, I don't want to like wax lyrical too much about my agent, but she is amazing and I love her.
Saskia's great. We've had her on the podcast. She was fantastic. Just really,
like,
really nice to chat to.
If you ever get the chance to work with Saskia, everyone like jump at that chance, because if you can ever have a one-to-one, if you can just have like a coffee with her, do it. Because she is brilliant. But she, like, right off the bat, I'm like, I love people saying, I'll get this back to you on Tuesday, and they get it back to you on Tuesday. That is just like, that's my love language.
Okay. Efficiency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was like that straight off the bat. And I just got a really good feeling. Like, she requested the full, and then she kind of wanted to chat, and I was like, oh, this just feels really exciting. And And then kind of she had a few suggestions for the book that just made it so much better. And so, yeah, when she offered me representation, I was like, yes, like absolutely. And I was very sensible and did the thing you're meant to do where you like wait a week and you wait for everyone else to get back to you and blah. But I was like, no, I just want to go with Saskia.
Okay, at least you did the what is the like recommended course of action.
I was so
before you
sensible.
accepted.
I didn't want to be.
Great self-restraint.
Yes.
Okay, well that's cool. But you did, in terms of, you know, you said that first novel that you put out, you sent out about 100. I'm assuming, depending on how to the letter you did this, 12 months, 10 each. You did 120 submissions, and
got 113 rejections. So at that point, people I guess people were responding a lot more because people talk about agents not getting back to them at all. But at that point, I guess they were.
I guess it's agents not getting back to people might be a more common thing now because the volume of applications is so much higher. The volume of submissions is just so high now.
Yeah, so this was like 10
enough.
Years ago. So
yeah,
it's changed.
And I think it was a lot different back then. How have you found? So obviously you've written a lot. But a lot of the writing you've done has been sort of by yourself, or you mentioned before we were recording that you spent some time with Write Mentor, kind of working in those kinds of writing communities. But how did you find, once you'd signed with Saskia, once you and Saskia had found a publisher to put your book out, how was the process of working with an editor and going through the different stages of editorial on that kind of level?
Oh, it was lush. Like it was really lovely. I think, like you said, because after so many years of like writing on my own and I'd been part of the writing community, so I'd had like loads of people read my books and kind of give feedback and whatever else. But I think it's just really different with someone that said like, I like this enough that I'm gonna back you and I'm gonna put this out into the world. Like that is just, for me, that was so affirming. And so, yeah, it was really lovely. My editor's called Sian at Canello, and I felt like right off the bat, she really got what I wanted to do with this book. And she actually suggested like really major changes. Like we massively changed the ending. And I think I rewrote about like 60,000 words of it.
Wow. That's most of the book.
Yeah, it's quite chunky. So we rewrote a lot and really, really worked on it. I feel like it's made it like so much better. I think, yeah, it's just been lovely working with someone that, yeah, like I said, really backs you and kind of wants the story to be as good as it can. And like she just asked so many questions, like, why is this person doing this? Like, what's the motivation between that, but like behind that? And it would make me think like, oh, okay, I know what the motivation is, but maybe I need to make that clearer so that people aren't asking that question. Or like, yeah, I feel like it made it everything sharper. And I love, I'm a bit secretive with my first drafts and when I don't think it's very good, but once I've kind of given it to people, I love feedback and I love that kind of, oh, have you thought about this? Oh, and sometimes I'll be like, yes, I have thought about it and I don't want to change it. But I've normally got a good reason. And kind of, I really love that collaborative kind of working together and finding solutions together. And yeah.
That's the best kind of critique I've found as well, as when people, you don't want someone to be like, oh, you should do this or you should do that. When you get when you do critique, whether it's with an editor, whether it's with just like people within your community, within your sphere, when they ask things like, oh, but why is this like that? And it's like, oh, I was wondering about this thing. Why was this that way? Asking questions is such I think a stronger way of kind of representing where a hole or an issue might be with the story than just straight up being like, oh, this is a problem.
I think it's hard, isn't it? The word should is always like an instant sort of like for me, because I'm like, you should breathe. Like there's very few things that you should do. But I'm like actually asking questions and kind of even like making strong suggestions, as long as someone's like, I very much felt that Sham trusted me, that this was my story and I knew it and I knew what I wanted to do with it. But she was just going to help me tell it in the best possible way I could. And that's just really exciting, isn't it? Like, and quite freeing, because you're like, I can do what I want with this story, but there's going to be someone standing there going, okay, let's make that really good. So yeah, really nice, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's editors for the most part. I'm yet to come across someone who's told me that the editor was like not really great to work with and just like saw the book in the best possible light, and everything that they said was just like kind of smart, like kind of challenge on like how that you could make it better, because the editor is there to help you. Like you and the editor are working together to make the best possible product in the end.
And in theory, your editor is like should be the person at the publishing house that has completely fallen in love with your book enough to champion it at every meeting and at every like kind of event and whatever else. They're the person that is kind of your point person, I guess. I think as long as things go to plan and your editor doesn't move on or whatever else, then they're the kind of the person that's kind of like really going for it for you. So I feel really fortunate. It did feel like it felt like it kind of clicked really easily, and kind of I was really excited about doing the work. Felt really good. Yeah.
Does it feel like, I mean, you've written so many books at this point, you finally got one coming out. Does it feel like it's been a long journey to get to this point?
I guess so. Like, it's been a lovely journey. Like, writing is just so lovely, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I feel very lucky that I struggled to start writing. I had really bad self-esteem, and so I'd write something down and then I'd instantly hate it and get rid of it. So it took me a long time to get there, but it kind of, now that I have, I'm like, this is such a wonderful way to spend my time. So in some ways it feels like a long time, but in other ways I don't feel like I've been sort of gritting my teeth and bearing it, and kind of it at times it has felt like a struggle, but most of the time it's just felt really fun and sort of really joyful. And the bizarre thing is that sort of my book is coming out like now, basically, and I'm like, what? I write secretly and sort of don't. No one reads what I write. So now I'm like, oh, lots of people are going to read it, or I hope. So that's kind of like quite bizarre and strange to get my head around.
It's a bit surreal, isn't it? But it sounds like you're the kind of person who, and I think a lot of people are like this. If you're lucky enough to be in a position to be like this, is that you would be writing regardless of whether you did ever get the book published. Writing is just something that you would do anyway, because of the joy of it and the kind of catharsis that comes with writing.
Yeah, definitely. I just, like I said, it's now it's got me. And kind of that's what I did. Like, I had surgery at the end of July, and my plan had been to kind of take August off and sort of rest and relax and recuperate. And probably about 2 weeks in, I just started sort of typing away. I was just like, oh no, I can't do much, but I can definitely get a laptop out for like 20 minutes and write a few words. And kind of, I must admit, I did get to the point with, particularly with Shot in the Dark, where I was starting to think to myself, like, maybe I'll start self-publishing stuff, because that is just such a huge industry now. And like, I feel like the quality of self-publishing has improved massively. I was like, you can do it in such a way so that it's almost indistinguishable from a traditionally published book. Yeah. So I was kind of, I think I was getting a bit antsy with the feeling of like not having readers, but I think I'll just be writing until my fingers don't do that anymore.
Because it's fun. Like, and like the main thing is that with most writers that I speak to is it's like, it's just a fun thing that we all like doing. And whether, it's great if we can make a career out of it and we can share it with people around the world, that's amazing. But also, like, it's fun just to do it. Even if no one reads it, just to have the stories, just to write it down, to finish. There's like, I think there's few feelings as good as like when you finish a manuscript, you write at the end, and you whether you print it off or you just have it there, and you're like, wow, look, I finished a story.
Yeah, I think it's lovely. For me, like, writing it is a joyful thing. Yeah. And just like telling stories is just like, it's mad, isn't it? Like, you have all these imaginary friends in your head, and you sort of write down what they do, and then someone else reads it and they have them in their head, and like that, like, that's magical, isn't it? Like, just kind of really like, and where do these people come from? Like, where do the stories come from? Like, it's just all like,
it's bonkers.
I feel like I'm sort of involved in this, like, almost sort of magical process of like creating this wild thing, and I'm like, that's really cool, isn't it? Like, great to be part of that.
Yeah, literally creating something out of nothing.
Yeah,
just for the fun of it, just share with other people.
Yes, and I think maybe that's what I've been really looking forward to, and what I am looking forward to now is that sharing with other people. I think maybe that's the bit that I'm like, I love writing for writing. I love just telling stories, and maybe like my mum reading it and that being fine. But actually, it'd be lovely to kind of share it with more people and sort of, just make more friends from them reading my books.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's all about community in the end, I think. It's because it's all about telling stories, right? And it goes back to prehistoric times where we'd all sit around a campfire and tell stories.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, that brings us to the final question, which, as always, is, Anna, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book would you like it to be?
So, like, this has caused me like an inordinate amount of stress.
I'm sorry.
Because we get like, spoiler, we get told this question is going to be asked. So I've thought about it so much. So I studied Jane Austen at degree level. I did my dissertation on her.
Oh, nice.
And her novels. So I was like, maybe one of them. Maybe Pride and Prejudice. I love that. And then I love like Frederick Backman and Elizabeth Strout. I sort of love those sort of character, really meaty books. And I've gone back and forth so many times. I think maybe, and just for today, that I would go maybe with Becky Chambers and The Long Way to the Small Angry Planet, which is like, again, really character driven. And it's this group of like mostly strangers in this spaceship. And I don't understand the science of it. And I'm fairly certain maybe the science is slightly made up, but they're going to this small angry planet and they're going to build like this wormhole-y type thing so that people from the small angry planet can get other places quicker. But it's just the story of them, because obviously the wormhole-y thing isn't there yet. They have to take a really long time to get to the small angry planet.
Yeah.
So it's just the story of like what they get up to on the way.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
And I just love it. I think some writers are so warm and so like it's almost like their book is like a bath that you just want to like sink into. And that for me, like Becky Chambers, their writing is just like, really beautiful and kind of, I feel like, maybe that book, maybe.
Oh, okay. What just out of interest, what were your like runners up?
Oh, they were just honestly so many.
Okay.
So I've just read Alexis Hall and their A Lady for a Duke, and that was beautiful. And I love TJ Klune and all his like Wolf Song ones, and I love his Extraordinary trilogy. And I said about Frederick Backman, like I love Beartown. Honestly, I feel like maybe I just instantly go mad on a on a desert island with only one book, because I love writing, but I love reading. That is when I couldn't write because I didn't sort of like what I was writing. I read all the time. I think maybe can I be on a desert island that's got like a library or something? That would suit
sure
me.
Yeah. I mean, we've been doing this for over 100 episodes. There should be over 100 books there now.
There should be quite a few books on that island by now. So
there's a lot of Austen as well, so that'll be there. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, so I bring an Austen then. I won't worry about that.
Yeah, I think there's duplicate Austens too.
Oh wow,
so
okay.
You can read different
really
editions.
all get together and like plan what we're going to bring, because
yeah, that's it. You need to communicate with all prior guests.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Anna, and telling us all about your writing and your kind of experiences with publishing and things like that. It's been really cool chatting with you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
And for anyone wanting to keep up with what Anna is doing, you can follow her on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Britton Book Geek. That's Britton. To make sure you don't miss an episode of this podcast, follow along on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. You can support the show on Patreon, and for more bookish chat, check out my other podcast, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again to Anna, and thanks to everyone listening. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, makes banking faster and easier. Like this.
Fargo, what's my checking account routing number?
And this.
Fargo, turn off my debit card.
And this.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries last month?
And that's just the beginning. Do you, Fargo? You can in the Wells Fargo mobile app. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
Terms and conditions apply. Your mobile carrier's availability and message and data rates may apply. Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.